I've been watching the conversation about Iran all week, and I'm still seeing so much confusion, a lot of repeated lies, and honestly, a media that seems more focused on seeing Trump fail than confronting a hostile regime that wants a nuclear weapon. So, today we are going to talk about all of it. But before I introduce my guests to help break down everything that's taking place, I want to play this quick video.
I have been blessed by Lord to finally publish a book. And I understand, especially for those of you who met me before, know my story and my background, it is pretty disappointing that the first book did not end up being my autobiography. But after the 12 days war last year between Israel and Iran, I woke up one morning, it was maybe a day or two after the ceasefire, and I noticed many people are celebrating this ceasefire. And as an Iranian American, I wasn't. I was very upset that there was a ceasefire. So I thought about it, I prayed about it, and I realized, oh, I know why my fellow Americans are celebrating this. Because they still don't understand the depth of danger we face from Islam. Furthermore, they still don't understand the biggest power behind Islamization is the regime in Iran. So that's why the first book is The Architecture of Jihad. I have no doubt everyone, correct me if I'm wrong, you all have heard of the word jihad, right? What if I just simply said there are 10 different faces of jihad? If you don't believe me, that's okay. The book is right there. Grab a copy.
All right. So, joining me today is Inez Annie Cyrus. She's the founder of Live Up to Freedom, Iranian American human rights activist, and author of The Architect of Jihad, which officially releases today. She was born in Iran, lived under Sharia law, escaped that system, and now speaks out about the realities of the regime. Inez, welcome. I'm so glad that you are here and we can discuss the book. How are you?
Well, I appreciate you having me on, and that actually just hit reality. The author of, I think you're the first person who has actually verbalized that, so thank you.
I'm so excited for you.
Yes.
Even before we jump into everything happening right now, I want to ask you, uh, how does it feel to have your first book out? How does this feel? This is awesome.
Thank you. How does it feel? That's a great question. Um, too many feelings involved. Very humbling. A great reminder of why I fell in love with America 24 years ago. I'm going to tell you a quick story. The day my author copy, which is right here on my desk, the day my author copy arrived, uh, for the record, I self-published. So for your audience who might think, why would I get an author copy? When it arrived, I had someone here, a friend who knows my background and, somewhat supports my work. As I opened the box and picked up the first copy, he walked into my living room, looked and said, "You okay?" I couldn't even say anything. I just flipped the book over and showed him the cover. And he's like, "Congratulations, all the great things." And I just stayed quiet for a minute and I just answered with, "Only in America." He looked at me like, "Huh?" I said, "Only in America. A girl who was shattered into pieces will find a future to become an author of a book so controversial she would not survive a day after publication in any other country."
Wow.
And he's like, "Can I just give you a hug?" I'm like, "Yeah, welcome to America." And I stand by that statement.
Wow.
Only in America could I be me. And only in America could I write this book, self-publish the book, publish the book, and feel proud about it. I think that answers the question.
Oh, that's beautifully answers the question. Yes. So this isn't just a book. This is something that every American needs to understand right now. Would you agree with that?
I would agree, and I would expand that every person in every single Western country needs to understand it. Because, yes, though our priority is America as Americans, no question about it, but this danger is beyond borders. The end goal, as I mentioned in the book, the end goal is global.
Mhm.
It's not targeted at one city or one state or one country for that matter. It's a global caliphate, the conqueror of the world under the flag of Islam is the end goal. So, yes, Americans definitely do need to understand it, especially because we're a little ahead of this curve compared to Europe and
Mhm.
Canada for that matter.
Wow. Yeah, the last podcast I had you on with me, you said something that keeps playing in my mind, and it was very simple. You said that, excuse me to your American audience, but your school system doesn't do a very good job of teaching you what's beyond the borders. And I 100% agree with that. And so I think this right here is going to be something that aids not only just during this time but future generations. And what I love about this book is it's not I wanted to get your autobiography, but I do appreciate so much that you dropped this after I started reading it, because I saw how pivotal it is for the future of America and in the Middle East, for us to understand what's taking place there, because this stuff right here is not taught in our school system. And you bring in case studies and testimonies and actual facts, not just like your own experience, like I mentioned, an autobiography, which I think would be amazing. But this right here, I think, takes it to another level. And when I started reading this, I noticed something, that you prepare the reader to not feel like fear mongering. It's not about, I'm about to go to Publix, and if I see somebody with the hijab on, I got to get fearful and point them out. It doesn't prepare you in that mindset or that frame of way of going. What this does is this prepare you to take action at your city council meeting. It prepares you to take action in any sphere of society where you see a system like this appearing, because you can recognize it, and you have verbiage to put behind what you're seeing, and you can explain it in detail and sound educated behind it, because you understand, you have the knowledge of it. And I think this does a great job. And I haven't even finished chapter 1 yet, but already I'm like blown away with the concepts in this book. And it's not like a difficult read, though it's very well written. So the average person can go through this, can understand what is taking place and what jihad means, what combat jihad is, and how that is the arm. I believe you say that that's the military arm in a sense, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, of jihad, because jihad is the like the doctrinal portion, and then you have the portion that actually enforces it through violence and other means like that. So this is good. So I would definitely recommend you guys to pick it up. You'll see this in the show notes, and you can buy it on Amazon. It's The Architecture of Jihad. We will go through this book during this podcast, so you guys can stay tuned for that. It officially releases today. Now, can you share how they can get the signed copy? Is that available as well?
Of course. I should say it is, I think, 2:12 Eastern time in the afternoon of Saturday. So the book is already out. So you can literally just go to Amazon and grab it. But if you prefer a signed copy, you can go to my website, liveuptofreedom.com. That's liveuptofreedom.com. And on the book page, there is an option to order your signed copy. I do have very limited inventory right there in front of me. So if you want a signed copy, order them now. It will come back in inventory in about 4 weeks. So if you don't grab them now, it's going to be a 4 weeks wait for the signed copies. Liveuptofreedom.com. And if I could address something, that's why on
Yes.
the clip you played, but that was my pre-release book signing in Chicago, because my story is directly tied to Chicago. Everything happens in Chicago for me. So this was last weekend, literally last Saturday on a stage in Chicago, which I cut that clip. And as you notice, I did say it was pretty disappointing for many that the first book wasn't the autobiography. That
Yes.
was just expected of me, right? It's like
I
it
felt
has to
that
be.
too.
And some of the dear friends in Chicago, they walked up to my table, they're like, "Wait, that's not your autobiography." I'm like, and they're like, "But wait, why?" I said, "You know me. I have to go against the rules. The rules dictates that I write my autobiography." I'm kidding. That wasn't the reason. The reason was, as I mentioned on the clip, it was more needed. Uh,
Yeah.
I will work on that. I don't know when, but one day I'll do the autobiography. But we will continue this topic on books, actually. The good news is I'm glad you said what you said. It will always be easy. Whatever I write in Substack format or book, it will always be easy for everyone to read because remember, English is my fifth language. I
Yeah.
cannot write complicated in English, anyways. That's the best I got. It's going to always be simplified in most terms. And you're correct. Yes. The Architecture of Jihad, just breaking it quickly, it has 11 chapters. 10 chapters are the 10 different phases of jihad, as I mentioned on that stage. Most people are like, wait, 10? Yes, 10. And that's why it's important. We all know about, we hear the word jihad automatically, killing,
Mhm.
battle, war. That's what comes to most minds. Now, a little more advanced into understanding. Some Americans are familiar with political jihad. Some are familiar with migration jihad, hijra. Um, some might even understand the civilization jihad, but that's as much as it goes. And that's where we fail to understand the importance of policies inside America and policies outside with our allies and our enemies. Because the other forms of jihad is what's working every day against us, and we just don't even know they exist.
Mhm.
We need to know they exist. And as you said, yes, I made it very clear on the book that uh, this isn't about, I'm not even talking about Muslims. I made it very clear before anybody comes calling me anti Muslim. This has nothing to do with Muslims. If I named a Muslim, they deserve their name in this book. I didn't name them because they were Muslims. I named them because they had ties to some sort of case that is related to the book.
Mm.
This is about the fact that we are so uneducated in this very crucial topic that they have purposely they taught us jihad means war. Jihad means blowing up buildings. Jihad means September 11th. They wanted us to just have one tunnel vision of jihad. So when the rest of it is working against us, we don't even acknowledge it. We don't even notice it because we don't know it exists.
Mm. So good. So let's skip to that. Let's dive a little deeper because you said that this is not about isolated events, but it's about a system, right? So, what is the architecture of jihad? What are the components?
So let's start with what is jihad before we talk about the architecture of jihad. As I said, most Westerners, they hear the word jihad. There's two group of Westerners. There are the ones that they hear the word jihad and like, oh no, my good Muslim friend told me jihad means inner struggle, like make it to the gym and stay fit and eat good. That's one category. There's a second category, which I very specifically took the risk to mention this in the book of jihad, has been undermined and over credited in both side of the party. Left, inner struggle, right, jihad means kill them all. Both mistake. What I just explained, the two categories that does exist in jihad, but the word jihad by itself does actually means a struggle. The definition in the Quran of jihad is a struggle in the path of Allah. Whatever that requires. Yes, actually, part of it is for Muslims to stay healthy. Yes, that is part of jihad. The inner struggle does exist. But any struggle that is required by Allah for a Muslim to continue in the path of Allah is considered jihad. Now, the architecture, the components are, as I said, everything that would fit in there, including, now hold on, let me explain path of Allah before we get to including. Path of Allah in Islam, not even in Sharia, in Islam, in Quran by itself, is the path. Lord, forgive me, I have to make this comparison. You know, our narrow path to our Lord's kingdom,
Yes.
they have a very wide path to Allah's kingdom, which we know as Satan's castle. That is what path of Allah means, making your way to the end where Allah will allow you to his heaven, whatever it takes. And the only way for you to make your way to Allah's heaven is to convert or kill all non-Muslims. That's the end. That's the path. Now, components are the one we know, the easy way out, kill them, jihad, or combat jihad, or as they call it, battle jihad, which was not even Muhammad's first way. For 13 years, Muhammad didn't commit any war against non Muslims. He practiced the other components of jihad, such as missionary jihad. We hear the word missionary, the first thing we think about, Aisha, is what? Preaching
Minister.
the gospel,
Yeah.
right? Inviting people to Christ. That's a good thing. But do we have a second step after that, Aisha? Like, what is this? Like, you preach the gospel, you plant the seed in someone's mind about Christ and his love. Is there action after that for you, or are you done?
No, you try to get them plugged into a local church where they can continue to grow in their faith.
And then
And
you go on to the next person to preach, right?
yeah,
In Islam, you plant the seed, you invite them to enter Islam. If they enter Islam, great. If they don't, then you go to your mufti, your imam, or your Islamic leader of society and ask them to issue a fatwa on that person to be killed. Documented in the book. We don't have enough time for me to give you every verse, every tafsir, everything, but
mm,
it is in the book.
I love that too. That you put the like even the script, the pieces of the Quran or the verses of the
Mhm.
Quran are in there too.
Well, that was the whole point. I again, the way I have phrased this book, even in my head, even in my outline, if you look at my original outline of the book, I said, you're not going to allow your bias insert into the book. No, girl, you're going to shut it off. You're going to write this not as a former child bride. No, you're going to write it as a daughter of a sheikh
Mm,
who flipped through these pages to train you to become him.
mm.
That's how you're going to write this, which means you're going to put the evidence in there.
Wow, I love that.
Everything has to be there. Your reader should not have to guess. Is she referring? What is she referring to? There is no guess game. When they're done with one chapter, they're done with one chapter. They have the information, they have the evidence to rely on the information, and then they have the tools to create their own case about this specific chapter.
Mm,
So that's why we do see some of my friends were a little concerned. It's lengthy. You have too much references into Islamic text and doctrine. I was like, it has to be. People can scan through it and not read it. I'd
yeah,
rather give them more and them not read all of it than give them less and have them go now research what I gave them. But
I
yes,
think
in
this is
missionary jihad, it isn't that you're preaching a spiritual arena. You're preaching a system. And if anyone refuses to enter that system, then exactly what Muhammad did. Oh, you're not going to convert? That's all right. I'm going to conquer you. And
mm,
the pattern continues in the most, for us Christians, because Christianity, missionary is a huge part of our life.
yeah.
Imagine how many Christians have been fooled by the word missionary in Islam,
Mm,
by the interfaith dialogue preach of, hey, just send your congregation, let them hear our end of the story, without telling the pastor that, oh, by the way, is anybody from your congregation who doesn't come to Islam will be an approved target under my so-called religion.
wow, wow. So I want to take that and then move into the different parts of how this shows up in society.
Mhm.
Because you mentioned in the book that the ideology shows up in politics, education, media, and culture, right? And
Yes.
I know that as we get through this book, we're going to see those things take place. And after you answer this, I'm going to tie it into what I learned from Charlie Kirk reading some of his writings too, because it's wildly similar. But can you explain how can we recognize that ideology in those different arenas, those spheres of influence?
Okay, so each one has its own different way of spotting, of course. For example, politics and policy. Again, in the book, um, under political jihad, I break it down. There are different actors that are involved. For example, you have the politician, easy to name: Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, Keith Allison, Omar Fateh, recently, Mamdani. That one is easy because you immediately know there's a candidate who's running for a very specific um, position or seat, and they are never, ever going to hide their Islamic beliefs.
Mhm.
I'm not saying, I want to be very clear, especially because I'm on your show to respect your audience. I am not saying any candidate who runs and is a Muslim, you should be afraid of them. I'm saying any candidate who runs and is identifying as a Muslim, you should take a closer look at them. Reason for that is not the individual. Again, it's the system. If you're identifying as a Muslim in any country, especially in a free society, that's choice. Let me explain. If you're in Iran, if you're in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, you don't have a choice to identify as anything else. Well, you do have a choice, but the consequence of that choice is most likely prison, torture, or execution. But in a free country like America, you choose to identify as a Muslim. Nobody's forcing you. So if you choose to do that, you're also giving me a very clear signal that you read the Quran, you believe in Allah as your God, and you believe in Muhammad as your messenger. Right there, there's a conflict for me as an American,
Mhm.
not as a Christian, as an American. Differentiate. Why there's a conflict? I know who your Allah is. I have read your Quran and I know what Muhammad policies are through our architecture of jihad. So, question is, I always have to question your agenda. Are you going to uphold the Constitution that is an absolute opposite of your Sharia? Or are you going to override my Constitution with your Sharia?
Mhm.
That's when the question comes in. Again, I'm not saying be afraid of them. I'm not even saying ban Muslims from running. I'm just saying pay closer attention. And the best way to do it is look at their policies, look at their speeches, listen to them when they talk. Pay attention to their month of Ramadan and their messaging. I released a Substack yesterday because yesterday was the last day of Ramadan. I said, now Ramadan is over. Let's address Ramadan. There's a message that spreads around. So many Americans in so many different places say Ramadan Mubarak or Eid Mubarak. Like, do you even know what you're congratulating them on? You're
Mhm.
celebrating the bloodiest month of Islam by definition of Quran, where the reward for jihad is tenfold or higher. That's what you just congratulated your fellow Muslims on. Do I claim all Muslims commit more jihad in Ramadan? Yes, but not all of them combat jihad. But during Ramadan, whatever a Muslim does is highly rewarded. Then there is other group of actors inside politics, and those are the funders. Those are the money people. When Mamdani won, after he won, a video of Linda Sarsour came out saying, "Now this is over. I stayed quiet." She was ordered to stay quiet. Apparently, I want to thank the Muslim community for all of your donations, and mainly CARE, Council on American Islamic Relations, that provided the majority of funds for Mamdani's race.
Mhm.
Those who fund these races need to be also looked at. Now, I put them in a separate category inside the book, which is financial jihad, where they use money to keep pushing other fronts of jihad. One of them is that. And then you have your, I'm not going to say leftists because lately we have a lot of right wing people who are supporting Islam. Then you have your non Muslims who play a role inside the politics of Islam. They side with them. They take their money and promote them. For example, we know about MEK. I have talked about them on your show. I've talked about them on my show. MEK, which stands for Mujahideen Khalq, a terrorist Islamic Marxist group. And I don't say terrorist because I don't like them. They were in our terrorist list and then they were removed in 2012.
Mhm.
They have Republican politicians and Republican influencers on their payroll promoting their agenda all day long. Well, point is, the third category are those who are siding. Again, in the book, I mentioned one of the ways you need to actually learn how not to enable jihad through your own lack of action
Mm.
is pay attention to your politicians, not the Muslim politician, your politician, the one you voted for. Watch their voting record. How many of them got behind the anti-Islamophobia bill of Ilhan Omar? When you find them, fire them, boycott them, hold them accountable, because we
Wow.
have a lot of them. I exposed 144 Republican Congress members who endorsed the leader of MEK. Aisha, that's 144 Republican Congress members. And some of the names, they fly around everybody's show as a patriot and America loving Congress members. But
Mm.
they endorsed Islamist Marxist group's leader as Iran's next leader.
Mm.
Every single one of them should be receiving a call from those who voted for them of, wait a minute, why are you funneling money for jihad inside America by taking money and endorsing Islamist Marxist groups? So that's that's how we deal with one category, which is political jihad.
Wow.
And none of these jihads, by the way, I think I made it in the intro of the book. I do mention none of them are just one-sided, one way, one tunnel. No,
Yeah.
they're all interconnected. That's why by the time you finish the book, you sit there, you're like, uh-huh. But then I'll be honest with you, you also have the feeling of, I have a lot to do because there's a lot to be done. And if you don't do it, again, it was my honor and privilege to write the book. And one of the things I have received many compliments about is the fact that many have pointed out the issues. Nobody has talked about 10 faces of jihad, but many have talked about one face, two face, maybe three or four of them. But none of them have included actual practical countermeasure steps at the end of each chapter to tell the people, not governments, not leaders, the people, tell them how to reverse this. It was an honor and privilege to do it, but I cannot make you guys do it. Buying it, reading it, and then taking those steps is 100% your responsibility, not mine. I gave you the
Mm.
tools. What you do with them is your job. And I pray that most of you do them because I actually
Mm.
made those steps pretty easy. Like it's easy work. I don't ask anybody to gear up and go to war with Iran. I mean, you could if you wanted to.
Okay, this is great. I was going to read one portion of your this is the preface, guys. And this kind of ties into what you were saying earlier when we talked about the systems. You said and I love that you break down who this book is for, what it's about, and like this is just mind blowing. So I'm just going to read the part I put in my notes what portion of this book, like what is it about open warfare versus the patient installation of influence. And you say, why should you read this, carry it, lend it, or send a copy to your representative? Because most of the West's current defenses were designed for open warfare, not for the patient installation of influence. Like that. Okay. That's why it's simple. It's a simple read, right? But the wording, it's not by accident. It's very intentional. And this just gets you to think about, and you mentioned we have this issue on both the left and the right about our nation, its founding, what we're fighting for, what we need to be aware of, because as you stated, we've seen a lot of conservatives just remain quiet or just kind of be okay with just participating in terms of sometimes just casting a vote, and that's really it. But we really have to be more active. We have to understand what's taking place, what's moving, show up at those polls, and come with information, come with facts. And I think this book prepares you very, very well in that aspect. And for me personally, what I am seeing in this is a parallel, because I've read some of Charlie Kirk's book. I don't know if you've read any of his stuff, but what he talks about is something very interesting. He says that when he talks about the left, he doesn't say that it's all the left. And you mentioned that it's not all Muslims, right? Um, but that fall into that radical category, and there's a left that fall into that. There's some on the left that fall into that radical category. And one thing that he says that also stuck out to me, he said that these are the people that would rather us by their policies be a global member versus a global leader. And because they come through a system, they've infiltrated the education, the media, which is why there's this constant attack and promotion of left ideologies versus anything on the right or conservative. And you see it in our politics, you see it in our culture, you see that with Hollywood. I mean, even when you look at these Oscars, these people that are winning Oscars, there's no rest in terms of the political arena, because they're using that platform to speak out. And most people, except for Nicki Minaj right now, I don't know who else is speaking on the right, but when you watch those Oscars, a lot of them they're more angled on the left. And when you look at our school, for example, Harvard, etc., the indoctrination of that ideology, that's also embedded there too. So now we're having, because we've sat back and haven't necessarily taken these spaces, or recognized the systems that have infiltrated these systems, or the war within these systems, we're now having to fight, because now we're seeing, oh, they want men and women's sports. That no, they want men and women's bathrooms. They want to mutilate our kids. Like, now we're waking up, because it's like right before us, it's not apologizing. It's just, it's in your face, and if you don't stop it now, you know, now you know where it's happening, because you can blatantly see it. But I think this book prepares you way before you get there. I what are your
If
thoughts on that?
if someone is willing to prepare themselves before they get there, I believe the pitch line I have on my Substack at the bottom of each Substack for the purchase of the book, it's something like get your copy of Architecture of Jihad and equip yourself before you're taken over.
Mm,
It's the willpower. Now, again, forgive me. I always apologize, but forgive me as what I'm about to say. Americans, we have in every country, in every nation, we have different type of lifestyle. I can think of 10 people I know personally in America, Americans who will sit here and tell you they had a rough life. They had too many ups and downs, broken family, and all of that is legit. But America as a nation and Americans as a group have never had to survive. And as a survivor, I can tell you that human behavior goes as followed. If you never had to survive by definition of life or death, if you never had to survive, you will always consider yourself an exception to disaster.
mm,
And
mm,
that's where they won't care until it's their backyard comes to play. But if you had to survive at some point, whatever age of your life, from there on, you always include yourself in the disaster because your survivor mode comes up. It's like, whoa, whoa, I might be next. Let me prepare. So that is the biggest challenge we're facing in America. Majority of Americans, by definition, yes, rough childhood, broken family, maybe losing a job, making one mistake and having a felony, all of that. None of that is surviving a system that was created to take down yours. That is the survivor I'm talking about. I
mm,
survived that. I survived a system that is created to take me as God's child and turn me into a half worth of a property. I had to survive that system. I did. And then after surviving it, I had to learn how to go from a survivor into a, overcomer or sometimes even overachiever. But most Americans have not, I mean, don't look at the feminists out there. They're complaining about what they already have. They're just too lazy to practice it. And that brings us back to, are they willing to read the book and do the steps?
mm.
Because a lot of Americans on each side of the aisle, again, they complain about things. And then I remind them that, wait, you already have this. They're like, yeah, but to get it, I have to do like 5 things. I'm like, oh, so you're not complaining about lack of rights. You're complaining about too many steps to practice your right. Now, that comes back to being a little bit of a spoiled.
Mm.
That's why I said you're going to feel like I'm giving you way too much steps to take. But if you want to survive, furthermore, if you want to stay alive, you're going to have to take these steps. Or one day, again, on that very stage on Saturday, I told people there's a clip of me saying, what makes you think you're different than Iranian people? Genuinely. What makes you think you're different than Iranian people? What makes you think 47 years from today, we are not on the streets trying to take our country back? And furthermore, 47 years from today, who's going to come to help America? Because right now, America and Israel are helping Iranian people. But when there is no Israel or America, who's going to come to help us?
Mm.
But again, I can say this, I can give you this possibility. But if your mind is so set on, I'm an American, we're Americans, nobody can touch it. As long as that attitude stands on top of everybody's mindset, there isn't much I can do about it because they're not even willing to accept the possibility. And now, if we were talking, this was, let's say 2015, 2016, I would have get it. But today in 2026, I say, so nobody can touch you. But when COVID happened, you
Mm.
pretty much 70% of this country bended over backward to keep their home and paychecks by wearing diaper and shooting themselves poison. How's that for you're very touchable, actually?
Mm. Now, we are going to get into tying the book into what's currently happening today, the operation in Iran. And
Mhm.
I'm going to bring in some questions I have for you. And this is going to be based off of an interview that I saw recently. And of course, what I'm hearing in the media as well. So we can get some insight into that from you. And then I've seen all of this stuff that I'm bringing to you is also tied with this book. So it's going to be great. But before we get into the portion where we're tying both of this into the current what's taking place right now in the Middle East, I want to introduce one of our sponsors. This is Your Skincare. Your Skincare is a brand that I've been with since 2023. They're a skincare brand, but they also have makeup options. They are all clean. They're made here in the USA. I love this brand. They got really fast shipping. It's just like Amazon. Within 1 to 3 business days, you'll get your items. And the cool thing is that they have allowed two options for you guys to take advantage of if you want to check out their options. I highly recommend them. I say if you try it out, I promise you won't be disappointed. My audience on TikTok, my beauty audience, loves this brand, and I have introduced this to them, and they constantly come back for the new drops and stuff because the product works and it's actually really good. So Your Skincare, they gave if you see the show notes or you want to screenshot that link there, you can use that. That's going to be a link directly to their website, and if you use that link, what you'll do is when you sign in, you'll be eligible for free birthday gifts. You will have free birthday gifts for free refills and then free shipping. And then there's also a discount that you'll get when you're checking out. When you get on the website, they'll have an AI skincare tool that helps you to determine which products will work great for your skin, depending on your environment, your habits, eating habits, drinking, all that stuff. It actually those questions to kind of give you a more targeted routine, and I love that for effectiveness. And also, all their items are made for sensitive skin, so it's like I said, it's top tier. So you can either go to their website and do that and get all those free perks. The other option is Amazon. And that code is Aisha 15 off. The only perk on Amazon is just the 15% off. And of course, you got Prime, you get that quick shipping. Okay. But that's more on your end than mine. So you get that 15% off if you do Amazon, and then the perks plus the discount if you go directly to their website. So either one you want to take advantage of would be great. I would 10 out of 10 recommend checking them out. Even their makeup drops are clean, and it delivers. Okay. Their powder was one of my favorite finishing powders. And it still is one of my top fives because it's clean. And it just delivers. It holds your makeup for 12 to 16 hours. Like it's great for oily skin, but very light enough for people that have dry skin. So, or combination. So yeah, it just, again, top tier. Check them out. Okay, so I want to get back into this segment. I have some stuff I want to give to you in terms of these what's taking place in the media and this recent interview with Lindsey Graham and Bill O'Reilly. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this interview into this conversation, it wasn't originally my plan, but I had a follower who commented on one of my videos. And they were like, "Hey, you should watch the interview with Lindsey Graham and Bill O'Reilly. They give more insight because Lindsey Graham had mentioned within 3 to 4 more weeks, he's predicting that we're going to be out of this whole operation is going to be done with." So I was like, okay, I'll check it out. So I went and watched the entire thing. And I thought it was good because I love that Lindsey Graham brings in some stuff that the media doesn't highlight because I feel if we hit history, which is what Lindsey Graham, and you know like him or hate him, I do think that he did say some really key things in this interview. Um, but he took us back to history and brought us up to the current. And I think we need to revisit history. And I feel like that's lacking. Like if you walk in the streets and you were to ask an American, even Gen Z, about World War II or our like they mentioned, our Axis powers, who are they? People would not be able to answer that question. So we have an issue with our history being remembered so that we can understand and predict what's currently going to take place. And I think history is very, very important for that matter, among other things. So one of the things that they were talking about was people who hear that. Let me get back to my notes. One of the things that they were talking about was the Abraham Accords and how this plays into the regional strategy. So he went back to October 7th under Biden and talked about the what that meant for uh, the region, because he was working on the Abraham Accords, and he said in addition to more than just the Abraham Accords, and he was talking about Saudi Arabia, the crown prince, and them, I guess, recognizing, excuse me, Israel as a state, and then the certain concessions that the crown prince brought in as to make, I guess, the case that the agreement that they make with the Abraham Accords and recognizing Israel, if these concessions were met, would satisfy the desire of the Muslim and Arab world in terms of what they're about to agree to. If that makes sense, I hope everybody's following me. So my question to you is, for people who hear that. So he mentioned, okay, before October 7th, there was real momentum toward getting Saudi Arabia into the Abraham Accords, right? And then that was paused. So, for people who hear that but really don't understand it, what were the Abraham Accords actually designed to do? So, we'll start there for the next questions that I have coming for you.
So, with Abraham Accords, I should set the record straight. I have been against them from day one. Reasons are explained in the book because I am aware
Awesome.
of what is known as Hudna, and most people aren't. Hudna is one of the forms of deceive or
Mm,
deception jihad, where Muhammad practiced it, his military practiced it, and from there on, historically, every Islamic military has practiced and used it. What Hudna stands for is when an Islamic army or military or governance has the right to make a temporary peace treaty with the enemy, and to be very specific, that enemy is enemy of kuffars, non-believers, because by law of Sharia, you're not allowed to make any treaty, any friendship, anything with non-Muslims,
mm,
even Christians and Jews, to be specific, because a lot of Christians are like, they mean atheists. No, in Quran chapter 5, verse 51 is very clear in Arabic words, very clear. O you who have believed, Muslims, do not take Christians and Jews as your allies, as they are each other's allies. And if you choose them as allies, you have gone against Allah's wishes. So, to be clear, when we say Hudna or temporary peace treaty, it's a Muslim country or a Muslim army, military, against a non Muslim country or a non Muslim military of even Christians and Jews. Because I'm aware of that. Now, the circumstances for that is when they're not strong enough to win the war, when they need to regroup. Again, practiced originally by Muhammad himself. But I'm aware of that. I know for a fact that as long as there's an Islamic government mentioned on a paper, it is Hudna. They're not going to honor this, just like they've never done every single treaty we ever had with any of these Muslim groups or Muslim countries, and it ended up being nothing but a momentarily. How many ceasefires we got with Hamas? I don't know, 520 of them. I'm making numbers up. So,
mm,
with that being said, I want to be very clear. I don't believe nor do I trust Abrahamic Accords. However, because majority of Americans celebrate it and they think it's real and it's going to get us somewhere, originally the plan was to bring more peace and stability to the Middle East by getting the major players of Gulf states, of Islamic countries, to come to an agreement, Abraham Accords, to where they will recognize Israel as a state. I will say what Lindsay, I don't really have any opinion except Lindsey Graham is a very confusing, not so level headed man. That's my opinion. But um, I don't agree with his statement, though. I have not seen that interview, just for the record, but based on what you said, I don't agree. Saudi Arabia has said that they're going to join the Kurds many times,
Mm,
but they never meant it. Even now, I'm not, this is a little complicated. So I'm not saying what happened on October 7th shouldn't be addressed or is not a major issue or a major jihad. But I'm saying to blame October 7th for why Saudi Arabia hasn't recognized Israel, a state of Israel, is not an accurate statement.
mm,
Again, historically, okay, let's start here. Saudi Arabia, though modern to your eyes through policy internationally, is still by far one of the most strict Islamic countries. I mean, that is where Muhammad was born. That is where Islam was born. You can't take that route off of Saudi Arabia. You can't. Inside the country, its own citizens are pretty much suffering, especially women. Reminding your audience, until 4 years ago, 5 years ago, Saudi women did not have the right to have a driver license. Then they were given a right to get a driver license with an attachment that in order for you to get a driver license, your male guardian has to come with you to DMV and give us a written authorization for you to get a driver license. So
mm,
government took power and handed it over to male guardian, not to the woman. So them joining Abrahamic Accords is not going to happen. And even if it does, we should not rely on it. We shouldn't. That's where I stand with those names, those countries. Same thing with the peace board. I mean, I have done it on my Substack. I can write two books, not one, two books about the peace board and the flaws and the tricks that are being used. And well, again, Westerners are not even seeing it because they don't know they exist.
mm. Now, what do you say to the claim? I believe this was posted in Political and a couple of other articles that the crown prince feared for his life if he signed on to the Abraham Accords because of what was stated in there without having those concessions. Um, it said that I remember seeing something that he feared that he would end up like Egypt Anwar Sabat, who was killed in I believe it was 1981 for the peace agreement he made with Israel. What do you say to that?
I will say that's exactly, is that the only reason? No, but that's definitely a factor. As I just said, don't look at how fancy he looks or how fancy he talks and shake hands. The root, the system,
Mm,
is very deeply rooted in Islam. Yes, it could very well be, I don't know, disappear or die if it decide to push this any further. And this is where, can I use this for exact reasoning of when I say stop paying attention to the Muslim part of the formula, start paying attention to the actual Islam part of it. This is exactly what it is. I'm
mm,
not saying he's necessarily a good guy. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying he's a Muslim who is showing that softness to possibly step out of Sharia. But then he is quickly reminded, or anyone else for that matter, reminded that be careful. You can step out of this system. You
mm,
can, but then you end up like me with bounties on your head, looking over your shoulder, or you end up with, someone like Salman Rushdie, who was stabbed in New York on a stage to a point of losing his left eye and most of the nerves on his left side of body.
my gosh.
Or you are smart enough to keep leaning back and forth, but not actually put your foot other to the other side, like Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia.
Mm,
But again, the pattern is the same. Methods are different. The pattern behind the system never changes historically from day one until today. That's why I love pattern recognition. Watch for the pattern. And Islam has proven to have the same pattern 1400 years or 14 million years later. It doesn't matter. The
mm.
pattern is the same. So, yes, I can see that being one of the reasons, not all, but one of the reasons or concerns for him.
Now, for you guys that are just tuning in, we're referencing this book, Architecture of Jihad, that just released today that she wrote that talks about the systems. And I love how she's continually tying it in because it's just so relevant to today. So make sure you guys pick up your copy. It is available on Amazon. It's also available on her website, liveuptofreedom.com. And if you go on her website, you can get an actual signed copy right now. She does have a limited amount of signed copy options or signed copy books. So if you want to pick those up, urgently recommend liveuptofreedom.com. You can grab it there. All right, I want to talk about that the nuclear side of this too. So because one of the things that was mentioned in that interview was that Saudi Arabia, one of the I guess concessions that they wanted was that we would help with their civil nuclear program, which is different from from developing WMDs. And but I still have a concern that I do want to run by you. But I want to ask you this. So people hear the Saudi nuclear program, and sometimes they immediately think the weapons, but there is a difference between the two. Um, do you know about that civilian nuclear energy and the weapons programs, and enough just to chat about it a little bit in simple terms before I move into the next question that I have for you on that?
Which part would you like me to address? The existence of
Just
it, the
make the
dangers of
distinction
it,
between the two so we understand what those programs are. So there's that civilian nuclear energy, and then you have the nuclear, program,
the weapon.
the weapons. Yeah.
I don't have this simple or complicated terminologies, but what I could say is don't forget Pakistan started with the same narrative,
Hmm.
civil
History again.
nuclear, and now they're sitting on 170 plus nuclear weapons. I can't, to me, there is no difference verbally. I'm sure scientifically there are so many differences. But when it comes to leaders of any country, by the ways, again, setting the record straight, I I don't like this whole idea of nuclear, no matter which country's holding it. I don't. I kind of like being able to push back and have a war without worrying who's going to push the button first and destroy lands.
Mm.
That being said, I'm sure scientifically there are millions of differences, but I can promise you when leaders talk nuke, it's never about what they say.
About energy, about industry.
It's not about energy, it's not about industry, it's not about stability. It's always the very first baby step to later become either Iran or Pakistan. Can I go
That's where I was gonna
sidetrack
go. So
here?
you're already hitting it. Yes, go. That's exactly where I was going to ask you, which was my concern, was if we, let's say that this operation in Iran, I didn't just name, I will declare successful. But we look at Saudi Arabia, right? Let's say that this whole Abraham Accord thing goes through. They, Lindsey Graham, as he said in the interview, is able to convince Congress to go forward in allowing us to be able to bring Saudi Arabia on, like we assist Japan and our other allies, and then help them with this civilian nuclear program. Could they likely be from that, because it would take years to develop from the civilian nuclear program, but it could develop. There's a possibility.
Mhm.
So do you think that there's a possibility that Saudi Arabia could be another Iran if we go forward with a deal like that?
Worse. Saudi Arabia could be another Pakistan.
Yeah. Okay.
Worse. Let me elaborate here. I'm
Yeah.
I'm I'm gonna I'm gonna do my best to do this clean and clear. So our claim, from what I understand, last year after the 12 days war, we got the ceasefire because we claimed that we destroyed Iran's nuclear facilities, which later came to be, well, not technically true. That's why we had to go back in. But the argument that I have put on the table for more than a year or five, actually over a decade now, is what do our policymakers think when they sit there and say, okay, so we kind of sort of created a country, Western side of things. And we said, okay, Muslims aren't getting along with Indians. So how about this? India, stay India. You Muslims of India, go have your own country. and they wanted to call it Pakistan. We said, okay, that's all right. You go ahead and be insulting because we believe in free speech. So be insulting, call yourself Pakistan. But it was absolutely useless fact for your audience. Pakistan means the land of the clean. They named it Pakistan because to them, Indians were filthy, non
Mm,
believers. Anyhow,
mm,
and then we said, okay, so you're pretty tiny, you're small, so behave and we let you grow on your own. Pakistan was created, if I'm not too far off, in 1946. 1946. It's not even 100 years old yet. You want to tell me why they hold the guillotine over our head today? We can't mess with Pakistan because they have 170 plus nukes. Not the technology, not the facility, not the enriched uranium, the actual weapons built ready to go, 170 plus of them. And then when we were informed of Iran's nuclear, again, this is documented in our own government. You can find it. If not, contact me. I'll give you the documentation. Iran's nuclear program didn't start with Iran's nuclear program. Iran's nuclear program is started with the actual brain behind Pakistan, the Pakistani professor behind Pakistan nuclear program.
mm,
You know why we couldn't go after Pakistan and tell them how dare you're giving Iran that technology now? Well, because they had 170 weapons. So that's why I want to be very clear when I say Saudi Arabia will be more dangerous than Iran and becomes Pakistan. This is why.
mm.
They will get to where, as it is, again, I don't know how much you or your audience follow Pakistan. I strongly suggest you should. I've put a lot of Substack on it out. A lot of people don't pay attention. Most of the time, when you say Pakistan, people think of the, grooming and rape gangs in London. Oh, that is the least of problems that we face from Pakistan. Let me tell you something interesting about how dangerous we have turned Pakistan into for ourselves. Since 46 until today, not a single administration in Pakistan has completed their terms. They were either assassinated or convicted of some sort of corruption and put in prison. How's that for stability of 170 plus nuclear bombs in a country? Now we're going to risk that with Saudi Arabia.
Mm. How
What
would
are
my
our
audience
guarantees
find
that Pakistan
information
is?
on,
I'm sorry, go
sorry,
ahead.
how would my audience find more information on Pakistan?
Go to my Substack, loveuptofreedom.substack.com. On the search button, look up Pakistan. All of my Substacks on Pakistan will pop up.
Okay, thank you.
That's the thing. The days I write, a lot of my own friends are like, you're not getting much traffic because you're writing about irrelevant things. I'm like, wait until they become relevant.
Mm,
I don't write about headline of news. Well, except when it's Iran, or Pakistan. But on normal days, I pay attention to things most of Americans are, and I guess rightfully so. Not really. We should pay way more attention to these countries in Middle East. But yes, liveuptofreedom.substack.com. You get to my homepage. There's a search button. Just look up Pakistan. All of the writings on Pakistan will pop up, including the creation of Pakistan. I
And
have done a Substack on it.
if I may, guys, the book is filled with case studies, this is evidence and also testimony. So, this is well documented here in the book. So if you want to check this one out too, or anything that she's saying, I'm just emphasizing that you're not getting somebody's just opinions. These are facts. These are evidence. She's laid it all out. Okay, so that way you have a reference point. You have citations, if you will, where you can go to that information and find and get the real, actual evidence of what's taking place in the nation. So she's really good at giving you the actual evidence. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's not to brag because it was rough. Growing up was very rough, but I had a childhood that allowed me to form my opinions after I knew the facts. So even if I write something
Love that.
just based on my opinion, it will automatically have the facts in it. It's when you learn the system before you have the brain to form an opinion, it's always an advantage.
Hmm. Now, I know that there's so many people that I talk to that don't see Lindsey Graham in a good light. Uh, So I understand. I'm not saying that I do, but I everybody that I talk to just they see something crooked. But I want to I want to add this into our mix and get your expertise on this. So Lindsey Graham's argument is when it comes to this Operation Iran, waiting too long makes the threat worse. So do you agree with that, or has that mindset caused problems before?
Oh gosh, that's a good one. Um, I think we originally waited too long. I do agree with that. I did actually verbalize that. If you put out the warning or the message on January 13th, you better make sure by about February 2nd we're hitting them. Because with a country like Iran, giving them so much heads up is not a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
However,
Ooh, that's good. That's
today, okay, it's going to sound like it, but I am not going after President Trump. I am giving you analysis of what's in front of us. It's not a specifically president. We could say Pete Hegseth or somebody else. I don't know. But today we're starting to look like we actually, though we waited long enough, but we still at some point underestimated our contingency plan. Why do I say that? When we went in, everybody, including me and you, were aware that there is a hostage token there, and that is a Strait of Hormuz.
yeah.
So that was a clear thing. Now, it doesn't look like we had the proper contingency plan for when it does happen because we thought they're not going to do it. Today or yesterday, when we hear the announcement that, and I'm not saying this is right or wrong, I understand this is sometimes form of war, but we, United States of America, just released all sanctions on Iranian oil. So they're going to start selling their oil. We could argue, well, they would have sold it to China anyways. Yes, but it would have taken way longer to sell it to China than when now they finally have a free pass from US to sell their oil to Europe and everywhere else. Why is that a problem? Again, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm saying it's a problem, which looks like comes from lack of properly having a contingency plan for a problem we knew we're going to face one way or another. The problem is we're hammering them. Well, technically, Israel is hammering the leaders and the
Yeah.
IRGC humans. We're hammering on facilities and buildings. We kind of split jobs there. We're hammering them, but then with what we were just forced to do, which is called the rebalance during wartime, meaning you kind of hit them and then give them a bit of a breathing room, hit them, breathing room. This could cause a longer war with them. I don't say never ending. Don't get excited, people out there who were waiting to hear that. It's just going to be a longer because the more temporary allowance of selling oil we give them, the more they can feed themselves back, and that is going to create a longer path, not as of years, but it could add a good couple of months to the scenario. So that's where I'm at. I'm sorry if it wasn't necessarily, I guess,
No,
I,
break that down a little bit more. So, because when I look at the United States, we only get 1% of our oil from the strait, right? And aren't we guarding that right now because we don't really have our allies who actually rely way more on it than we do?
yes.
Um, okay, so explain, elaborate on that.
Okay. So, though United States of America necessarily by itself may not need a strait to be open or has the guard, but you cannot be involved in a war. Well, you can, but right now, under the circumstances, it is not a smart idea to create a global economic collapse because you don't want to release any of the choke on your enemy. So if we continue pressing Iran without giving them this relief of sanction, what's going to happen is globally there will be a higher risk of us being blamed for what's going to be next 10 years of our life than having to release chocolate, say, listen, we're still at war, we're still hitting you, we're going to keep hitting you, but in meantime we're going to relieve your sanctions so you can sell your oil to just catch up with the last 10 days. And by the way, this is just catching up. would last 10 days. We're not even thinking of tomorrow. The temporary release is to just get things back to zero. Now,
Mm,
how are we going to maintain it on zero? That I don't know. We'll hear about it when they release the information. Right now, we want to catch up with the last 10 days of the, we could say economic collapse. We could say oil industry collapse. We can name it whatever we want, depending on our preferences. But the point is, we got to a point where globally, US is now under too much pressure
mhm.
to sustain a war without having a global effect. Because, as you know, almost 9 out of 10 of our allies, well, all allies except Israel would love to always blame us, right? Especially
Yeah.
those NATO allies who refuse to get involved with this war.
Who Trump already called out at the beginning of his presidency that he wondered if they would even assist us. I think we've seen a
Yes.
lot of the stuff that Trump has said happen exactly how he said it would.
Yes, but that's exactly where we're under just as much pressure as we're putting on Iran.
Mm,
Though they don't have to get involved. That's why they're not. But they can put more pressure on us for backing away because they're facing the consequences of our war. They have stayed out of it to be able to call it your war, not ours.
hmm.
That's a strategy by them.
But
And
why do you think?
unfortunately, that strategy is forcing us. Again, I want to be very clear. I'm not saying this is right or wrong because there is no right or wrong when it comes to the sensitivity of the target, which is Iran. But we have to handle this without putting more pressure on ourselves. It's not the economic pressure on us, it is the global pressure on us. So we had to release some of that pressure by giving a temporary release on sanctions of Iran's oil.
God, I understand. Do you think that this sets a precedent for China, for Russia, who rely on, heavily on that Iranian oil, like that, kind of we're in control type sense? Because, we got Venezuela, right? And that's, I think, where China was buying their oil very cheap there. And then we got Russia, and then now we have Iran. That we have the Strait of Hormuz, kind of have that under control as well. So, do you think that this is setting a stage where it would be a deterrent to other nations from doing certain things? Like we already know that China, quote unquote, wants to invade Taiwan. Uh, Russia and Ukraine, this is still taking place. Do you think that this will provide a deterrence?
Let me ask you a question. To answer your question, let me ask you a question. How do you think Iran is keeping, by the way, we should be more precise in our wording because I like to do that. The Strait of Hormuz isn't completely closed, it's partially closed. But how do you think Iran, the regime of Iran, is keeping it partially closed, Aisha? Any guesses? Because we know they don't have a navy left.
Yeah,
So how do you think they're keeping it partially closed?
maybe. I'm not sure. Proxies, maybe.
Who are the proxies? They're not the jihadist proxies. They're keeping it closed with the help of their own allies of China and Russia, exactly for what you just said.
Hmm.
If they maintain that closure long enough, this release of sanction will come to picture, which it did. And that's going to give them a little, not major, but a little bit of upper hand. A week ago, I said on my show that we need to pay more attention. Why is our government not going after China and Russia, at least with threats of saying, we know Iran cannot keep this close? And the only people who are willing, documented equipment that China has provided Iran for a day like today, why are we not calling him out?
Hmm.
I understand. I was answered by a few friends, well, we don't want to expand this war. Why not? I know I sound like Lindsey Graham right now, but I'm not Lindsey Graham. I'm not saying why not because I want this war to continue, but I'm saying as an American and as an Iranian, I am so tired of the beautiful prize known as Iran to be constantly either used as hostage or counted as hostage for these dictators to keep running around.
Hmm.
So at least we need to call them out. But yes, ma'am, there is no way Iran has the capability to keep those areas closed right now. They are directly getting not manpower, but equipment, technology, and devices are coming from Russia and China to help Iran continue that closure.
Mm.
Because, yes, China heavily, heavily, as I said, the oil that's already in the ships that are being released to be sold to the world would have been sold to China anyways. But this way, it's expedited, and Iran gets to sell more oil while to China than the rest of the world. But this is another time we could, if we wanted to be like really picky, I could bring our ally back into the conversation, Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is the unique country that doesn't rely on Hormuz, Strait of Hormuz, to send out oil. Did you know that? They have two different ports to do it. There's another port that Saudi Arabia can handle that does easily handle up to, I think, 1 million uh, tanker of oil. That would be pretty helpful right now, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Why is Saudi Arabia not being held accountable? Why is Trump not on the phone with Crown saying, hello, step in? You never got involved with your military. What happened to all the F-16s we sold you? Why are you not helping us? Okay, you don't want to get involved with war, that's fine. At least help us with your other strait to send some oil out. We're not doing that either. But then again, majority of Americans probably don't even know that about Saudi Arabia to sit here and say, are they really our allies? Because this is the time to ask.
Mm.
The best time in life to ask who's your real ally is when war breaks, personal, professional, business, or country wise. Saudi Arabia has proven to not back us up regardless. Words go so far.
Interesting. I mean, I hope that prayerfully that Trump continues to see all of this, you know, and can act in accordance to what is happening. Uh, so I know that we're at time. I don't want to ask you another question, but I want to throw in the book one more time. So guys, Architecture of Jihad is released, and you can pick this one up at liveuptofreedom.com. I also put it in the show notes if you want to grab it on Amazon too. You can pick it up there. It's on Kindle, and you can get it the paperback as well. The book is amazing. Okay, like I mentioned, this is not her autobiography, which would have been amazing for her to release, but this book. As I read through this book, I'm very grateful she released it, and I'm very grateful that I think it's a God thing that you were working on it and it's been able to be prepared for a time like this. So this is going to break down the system so you can see it in education, politics, and media, etc. This is not a book that paints a picture of you see a Muslim person, you should be afraid. It doesn't do that. Okay. This is breaking down the system so you understand now and in the future how to prepare, how to articulate what you're seeing and get to those polls and stand up with information and knowledge that is solid, okay, and factual. Like I mentioned, she throws in a lot of case studies, testimonials, the Quran. I believe the Hadith is in here too. There's so many of those texts that are in here that she quotes, so that way you, without even having to go and find those texts, have them right here in the book as she references and talks through this. And this is the book is amazing. Okay, I'm only in chapter one, and my mind is blown by what I'm finding out in regards to jihad and the system in our and within the system. It's just really good. So I highly recommend grabbing this. Um, do you have any final remarks, Inez?
Well, first of all, thank you. I appreciate you having me on the day of the release. That
Yeah,
means a lot. I am glad you're enjoying the book. I
I love
can't
it.
wait to hear your final thoughts. And I will ask your audience to grab a copy, Kindle, paperback, signed copy. Yes, huge uh, part of it is you support my work because again, self-published, nobody paid me to write it. When I sat here for months writing it, researching it, correcting it, I wasn't on anybody's payroll. So financially you take a hit when you have to do this on your own. Yes, you purchasing the book helps me financially, but the huge part of it is, again, when you buy a house, you walk into your house and you walk around, you get to know your house. You figure out which door is the exit door, which one is the basement door, which one is the closet. You measure everything before you go furniture shopping. And that's what architecture of jihad is. I am giving you the room by room from measurement to capability to capacity of every corner of jihad. So not only you can spot it next time, but you can also reverse decades of different phases of jihad that has been implemented inside America.
Mm.
When you read it, yes, for a minute you're like, but then immediately follows with so much proper hope that shows you that we are not lost. This
Yes,
battle is not
I
over.
love
It's
that.
just about to start. But if you don't get the training, you may not be able to get actually involved with the battlefield.
Hmm.
So get a copy. And then if you like it, leave a review. Your reviews on Amazon will be greatly helpful.
And if you purchase it on Amazon too, I think we can, and leave a review, we can get you to bestseller, right?
That would
And
be
this,
fantastic.
yeah.
Yes, those
So
reviews
definitely,
help. Yes.
yeah, guys, make sure to check it out. Get the book. It's a very good read. I want to say it's not dense, but it's very well written. Okay, the average person can understand it. It's very, very well written. So definitely recommend this. And I also floated the idea. So guys, let me know in the comment section if you'd be interested in this, of doing a book club where we can have her break down the things that we're reading inside this book. So if you have questions, I don't know about you guys, but a lot of times when I read books that are really good, sometimes I want to talk directly to the author to ask some questions about a phrase or a chapter or something that was said in the book, and we can make that available at least with this book. So if you're interested in us doing a book club, something that would be like twice, we meet twice a month and go through the book, that we get time to read and read through the chapters, and you can formulate your questions. Then we'll have Inez come in and answer any questions that you guys have. So if you're interested in that, let me know, and I would love to put something like that together, because like I mentioned, the book is good, and for us that are fighting for this nation, we love this nation, we want the future of this nation and beyond, us even living on this earth, for it to be secure for our future generations, then we have to understand things like this. And like I mentioned, she doesn't. There's not fear mongering in this book. The why, she talks about all of that in the book, of why it's helpful to you to understand what's taking place, is because she says something in this book that Dr. Ben Carson also said. I remember at a Turning Point USA event I was at, and he said that our enemy cannot beat us militarily, so they attack us from within. And she breaks down how this appears within the systems. And as she talked about, was as we see these different, not necessarily that we need to be fearful of them, but she said, watch these Muslim men and women who take offices within our society, within the political arena. Watch what they're saying, watch their policies, pay attention to those things. And this is how you can spot what their framework is when it comes to our nation. Are they willing to put their Sharia law stuff aside and honor our Constitution, or are they coming with a different framework to dismantle it from the inside? And this is how you can recognize it, and you can come with articulation, not fear mongering, or not sounding like an Islamophobia, but you got documentation, right? So you can crush the entire notion of the name calling of Islamophobia, etc., with this book. Okay. So again, if you want to join that book club, let me know in the comment section. You can also hit me up. Hit me up. You can also hit me up and as a subscriber too. That's also in the show notes if you want to subscribe. I know a lot of you have. So if you're interested in that, I would love to do it. So if you want to be a part of that, let us know. Inez, thank you so much for taking the time and hearing the call to drop a book like this. That's not normal. That's not like, it's just well done. This is something that you would want to use, that you would have to go through chat gpt, you would have to pull up articles to get this information, and it's done in a book for you, and concisely done, and gives you everything you need to be on the front lines of this, and have knowledge and understanding to pass it on to the next generation, and to also stand up for this nation. So definitely recommend this. Thank you, Inez, for dropping this at this time. I pray you get to bestseller as well. And thank you so much for your time today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me on. Look forward to coming back soon.
Yes, definitely got to have you on. And guys, I want to thank everybody for watching. Donald James Bogan, thank you so much for the stars. I appreciate that. And guys, if you want to stay tuned, I'll be live again next week. But my guest for next week is very interesting. So, and I'm going to have Inez on again. So, if you're sad about that, don't be. She's going to come on again. But next week, I'm bringing on a woman named Paula Tisdale. She's a Republican State Executive Committee woman, foster care review board member, and we impact the nation leader and a poll manager. So we're going to shift the conversation to what's happening at the local and state level and how people can actually get involved. Paula has seen the divide firsthand in the right, in our movement on the right, and you're going to understand its impact and what we need to do to stand firm as Christian conservatives and holding firm to that value. So you're not going to want to miss that either. She brings a lot of insight from within that. So I'm going to bring that on for you guys too. It's going to be awesome. Inez, thank you again so much. And guys, tune in with me next week, Saturday, again, 2 to 3 p.m. ET. I'll see you guys then. And goodbye for now.